Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me take this time to really say thank you so much for always being here. Thank you so much for those who subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for the feedback. Thank you for all those who share our events, our sessions, those who comment even during these sessions. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know people have been waiting for this for so long. Throughout this weekend, people have been texting me to say, wow, we've been waiting for this. So yeah, if you are new here, a warm welcome. You are joining a tribe of transformation radicals here, people who are so hungry for knowledge. So welcome. You are in the right place, definitely in the right place. We love conversations. We love those juicy conversations, transforming conversations, and definitely those uncomfortable conversations that we have to have. So yeah, special thanks to all of you with all the feedback and everything. Yeah, I'm your girl, Bonolo Palagayan Toiwa. I am a corporate trainer, BQ accredited. I'm a transformation coach. I am a presenter on Do My Fam. Welcome, welcome. Today, I'm joined by something is disturbing me a bit, so I'm gonna have to do this. I'm so sorry. Today, I'm joined by Wame Thanke. Wame Thanke is a family law practitioner. What is the difference between a family law practitioner and an attorney? Wame Thanke is Wame Thanke, family law practitioner or attorney at Thanke and Associates, based in Gaborone and Francistown. Welcome, Wame.
Hi, Bonolo. Thank you for having me on the show.
Awesome. I know definitely they've been waiting for this. They've been waiting to hear you. I saw the comments. Somebody said she was your classmate and she was excited. She's like, this girl is doing so much in this space and I can't wait to hear from her. And yeah, if you just joined us, welcome. We are here every Monday, 7 to 8 p.m. bringing you transforming conversations. Every single Monday we commit to this and we do this. And today we are about to have one such transforming conversation. Wame, marriage is costly, I think. It is costly, ma'am. Oh my God. But you know, weddings are so cheap now. My friend was saying to me, Bonola, I can't believe I spent 100,000 pula just on our wedding day. And now weddings are like what, 40 pula? If you don't want to spend much, honestly, you could pay Molaudi and you are done with all that. Yeah. But, you know, marriage is a different story. Marriage is a different story because, you know, I got married last year, so I'm new to this institution. And I feel like, you know, every decision I make, every decision about my marriage, one is attached to some law. I agree to marry my husband. There's a law about that. If he's bringing children, there's a law about that. If I'm bringing children or I don't have children, whatever the case, there is some law somewhere. And I feel like I have to understand, I have to know a whole lot of laws, Wame. And I feel like I need an attorney more than ever before now that I'm in this institution, because I dread dealing with the consequences of making uninformed decisions. And I feel like if I deal with this before I say I do, then I believe I'll pay much less than having to do some adjustments or changes after I say I do. But if you are here, you discover a whole lot of things, you didn't do them before, you can still do them. It will be much better than, God forbid, you have to face a divorce, which I believe is more costly. And the expensive part of it here, we're not only talking about monetary wise, but even emotionally, we invest so much. So this is so mind-blowing for me, and I know for a lot of people as well. But I know that you are so passionate about this, and I know for sure today you are going to shed some light, and people will leave here with something to do in order to better their lives. So,
Yeah, indeed.
Wame, I want us to start here. I never ever want to assume that people know stuff. So I want us to start here. I would like for you to really define marriage for us, the legal, because you are an attorney. And I love the fact that, you are also a trainer. You are very good at that. So I know for sure you are not going to come here as an attorney only. You'll be able to also train our people right here. What is marriage?
Okay, Bonolo. In short, marriage is the coming together of a man and a woman in Botswana, that is, to become one person that is a unit. It's like being regulated by the law. It's in essence binding two people in what we call a contract, and in church would say a covenant, to have their lives aligned in such a manner that the two of them owe each other loyalty and owe each other a whole host of things that come with the kind of package of the marriage that they intend to get into.
Right. Wame, over the years, you are definitely talking about a formation of a family right here. Two people coming together to build a family together. So over the years, the structure of Botswana family changed. We now see a lot of blended families. So people marry Wame, some bringing children into the marriage, some don't. Children from previous marriages. Sometimes it's a child, sometimes it's two children from two different relationships. Those are the dynamics. Some don't. They don't bring any children, just the two of them. People marry in or out of community of property. Apparently, there's the accrual system, non-accrual system. I want you to really talk or speak to that in helping us really with conversations we should have before we say we do. This is where I really want you to break it down for us and consider what I said. Also, conversations between me and my partner, conversations, if there's anyone else I should have a conversation with before I say I do, please do mention that as well.
Right.
I know.
You're bringing in a very mind-blowing dynamic to the conversation. I think the first thing I'd want to start with is not just run to the in or out of community of property, but the basic questions, where you asked about the financial standing of a person, the health status of a person, the background, how many children they have, like you said, the kind of relationship they had with the parents of those children, how you would assimilate the children into the marriage, and so on and so forth. When we address the health one, there are many marriages which have ended because there has not been disclosure of health statuses. And we're not only looking at your HIVs and stuff, but there are a lot of myriad issues that people face health-wise. And we somehow just overlook the need to divulge information. And it may lead to not only divorce, but annulling the marriage. And in certain circumstances, you have the right to say, you know what, I do not want to be deemed to have been married because there was non-disclosure of a very paramount part of my life, which included the health area of another person that was not disclosed to me. So conversations around health are very, very vital. Now, conversations around money. We've seen
before you go to money, Wame. Before you go to money, on health, what give an example of a health status that one has to really disclose beforehand. Just
currently,
an example.
Currently we live in a society where HIV/AIDS has dominated the health sector ya Botswana, and you have people who are HIV positive and who are HIV negative. And I've had clients who've come to me and said they are afraid of disclosing that they're HIV positive because they're not certain as to whether their spouse would still want to be with them. And unfortunately for some, post getting married, some get to find out how undisclosed is this aspect of your life. And it becomes an issue to the point where we all are aware that if one gets to know omo infectile ka bomo, you can get in trouble. And obviously it causes trauma, it causes distrust, it causes other issues, hela mo lenyalong. And that issue qualifies one to come to court for annulment because you had not disclosed. So not only HIV/AIDS, but we have issues with fertility.
Yeah.
Kana motho o mongwe ha tla, the expectation ke re simolola lelapa, and the normal way of starting a family is when the two of you actually get into the process of childbearing. And non-disclosure of such a fact can lead to divorce or annulment because but though he clearly a paramount part of why one wanted to have gotten married. So it's a very, very vital conversation for people to have. And I suggest people start having it from the start of their relationship so that it guides the path at which the two will follow.
Right. And that's health. So you were going to go into finances.
Yes. Oh, that forms a very big part of a lot of conversations in marriage. Some leading to divorce, some leading to beautiful marriages because people actually had the conversation. It's one of the most difficult to have. Just to say to another, you know, I'm in debt. It's such a taboo. To say you don't have money, especially the pressure put on men, is such a taboo. And these conversations around money are what would form the marriage you have. And avoiding them can lead to a whole lot of issues, can lead to debt that is now applicable to both partners on the marital that they had opted for. So the disclosure is very necessary from the onset. Yeah. And then now, when you talked about how the dynamics of marriage has changed more Botswana, the reality is with the few years of practice that I have, I've seen a lot of divorces go down. And a lot of divorces that also have children and a lot of children. And obviously, with the passage of time, that dilutes the population. The ratio of the not married to the having children, not having children. And we find ourselves having a lot of blended families, like you highlighted earlier. And the basic question that one has to pose to their partner o nang le ngwana ke gore re dira jang ka ngwana wa gago. And it's not a nice conversation because it appears as if o tla ka morwalo, but the reality is when we speak fact ke morwalo ke tiro. That child has a financial implication, a social standing implication, a socialization implication that needs to be addressed by the two of you getting married, by the parent omongwe who has to also appreciate the relationship that the stepmother or the stepfather would have to have with their child. And the question becomes, are we addressing it from a point of view of custody only, or are we adopting this child? When we now take in the concept of money, what does that mean? Is it applicable in civil law? Is it just sticking to customary law? Those are conversations and realities of life we need to appreciate. And then,
right.
Obviously, the main one that is always my point of reference is, are we in? Are we out? Now, in answering that question, it has It has brought about a whole host of issues, from the church space to the family space to the two people who are concerned space and the legal space, because ultimately everything is governed by law. And the minute you start addressing that question, you get to understand how your risk is apportioned in marriage. Not at wedding stage, the marriage. What you choose to do with how you deal with the property regime dictates how the flow of your marriage will be. And obviously, that raises a lot of questions on whether we should get married in or out. I often have people babaring, it feels like it's not marriage. And actually, I've had those comments thrown to me as an advisor. Why you advise batho gore ba se ba tsena ba tlhakane dithoto, kana why you advise ka tlhakane dithoto. But it's really, really dependent on the risk appetite of the individuals. It's also dependent on how far exposed one is. Ke kgona go tla ke le Wame having debts of my own, having created businesses that have attached debt to myself, and me thinking, according to company law, PTY Ltd means limited liability, whereas with banks I've been signing sureties, and I come thinking I have no debts attached to myself, but they belong to the company. Therein I get married in community of property, and my poor husband comes along and ale scotch-free, debt-free, no issues. And we attach ourselves to the in-community of property regime, having assured ourselves with the little knowledge we have that, yeah, the companies own the liabilities. Snaining along the way, we realize, oh no, Mama, you have assumed the liabilities the day you signed surety. And when I'm Mr. T, you actually have assumed the liabilities the day you married Mrs. T in community of property. So the knowledge around that is very, very important. And the extent of exposure limits how you get to be assessed for financing, how you get to take in more debt and take in risk or risk appetite of lelapa. So it's just not about saying hara tlhakanna and it makes us feel uncomfortable, but it's hara tlhakanna, what does that mean? And also in the conversations of not having married in community of property, you come across the accrual and the non-accrual terms that you highlighted earlier. And you need to understand married out of community of property using accrual and using non-accrual. For an example, you've had couples who have invested in each other's lives for the longest and would want to still control risk and would want to still have the ability to transact and make the mistakes that they want to make outside putting the other party in jeopardy. And it's such couples that have a conversation around your accruals, or in the future. Now, when either we die or when we divorce, the story is that we would be put at equity. Now, it's a bit different from in community of property, because in community of property puts you at equity, profit and loss from minute number one. With accrual, it's done at the closing of the transaction, which would be either death or divorce. And I'll call it a transaction. Now is I'll just call it a transaction. And then when we're talking about non-accrual, we're talking about the assessment of risk in such a manner that whoever carries the risk, the liabilities and the assets thereof are in their names and for their benefit until such a time that they decide whether the other spouse should have it by way of a donation or in a will at the time of death, or even at time of divorce when they want to give the other party. So it's those different conversations that we have to have. We can't avoid having them because in essence, and it's going to affect the whole relationship. And that's where you really now get to understand what not having the conversation actually is very costly.
Yeah, I want to take you back a bit, Wame. You talked about risk, the marriage regime really being about exposure, risk exposure. I want you to take, I want you to really give us examples around there. What exactly do you mean by that?
Right. Let's take marriage and community of property as a first example, right? When you're saying you're getting married in community of property, you are saying everything that Bonolo has and everything that Bonolo's husband has comes into one basket. And everything you have in this instance is your assets and your liabilities. No exclusion thereof. Unless
So
you sign.
my debts are his debts are mine.
Yes.
His assets are mine, my assets are his.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless you specifically signed an antenuptial contract that says rebela tseko thoko e be re tla go tsena mo lenyalong la tlhakano dithoto with whatever we're going to accrue going forward. Yes. So
that's
basically,
that's
in community of property. And therefore, right, when now we're talking risk, we're saying if in the event I get or you get the estate in such a position that it has to incur certain losses, the losses are attributable to you.
The estate here, for the benefit of all of us who are not attorneys, right here.
Yes.
The estate meaning our assets, right?
Yes. Your assets and liabilities. That is the estate.
Yes,
you know that
our
an
assets
estate
and
can
our
be,
liabilities.
Yes. Because an estate can be in the negative.
Right.
So whatever affects Bonolo in terms of how her finances were run, and that has run her into the deep and gotten her into trouble with the sheriffs, affects Bonolo's husband. So ga di sheriff di tla ga di kgaoganya gore okay ditlhako tse di curtainetse TV ye ke tsa gama. No, they get in and they take everything that belongs to the estate because the two of you are married in community of property. Now,
awesome. That's in community of property. Now you are moving into out of community of property and also highlighting that risk factor.
Yes, yeah. That runs a little different. We're in the same type of setup that I had just mentioned, but Bonolo's risk is handled by her in terms of calculating her net worth when it comes to the assets and the liabilities is her husband's. So in an unfortunate instance where there is exposure to a great negative for one of you, and now we run into the court granting orders, now because you're married out of community of property, that which belongs to your husband cannot be touched unless he has signed to be surety in the transaction you are in trouble for. So now the exposure is limited to what belongs to you in your names only and leaves his property to him. Now, this puts the couple in an advantageous position because not everything is going to be taken. The estate can still run. Because remember, it's not like you are running a separate estate completely, or more separate estate completely, such that that would not be marriage. But it's the transactional life, yalona, no mara ha ke place a risky asset 1, 2, 3, they are safe.
Right, and I really wanted you to highlight. I wanted you to highlight what you just said even more, because people think of marrying out of community of property as, in a negative way, most people to date. So can you share just how, practical examples of what happens in a marriage where with that marriage regime, marrying out of a community of property in terms of, their assets and liabilities. For example, you mentioned that if I run into debt, if we happen to, and then my assets are attached, we'll still be safe because my husband's assets will not be touched. And so the home will still continue. We'll still have a house if the house is under his names. So do couples like that say, okay, I'm more exposed, and so I decide that our family, my house, would be under his names so that it's safe. do people do stuff like
You,
that?
you actually have couples who do that, hey? Dependent on the area of, say, their employ or self-employment, where they're saying is very, very risky, and as such I can't afford to have all property in my name, and for the sake of wena le bana mogatsaka, we need to at least have a home if things go left, and they actually do transfer property to the other party. You have such couples. And unfortunately, again, in the same breath, you do have couples who literally hog things to themselves and say, Sekisime. And I believe that's a lack of understanding of the transaction you are in, or the covenant you are in, however way you want to view it, It doesn't mean that when things are south for me in 2020, in 2021, they'll still be like that. You'll be the one who's exposed. Do you expect me to treat you in the same manner that you treated me? And would that even be marriage? Because marriage is about cushioning one another. It's about providing for each other, and providing the whole nurturing environment. It's not dictated by assets and liabilities, but it's how you treat the assets and liabilities and how you transact with them that actually makes or breaks the marriage.
Right. Wame, the unfortunate situation, I want you to go back there, really. The unfortunate situation of divorce when it comes to the two different marriage regimes. How can you talk about the estate in a case where in community of property, out of community of property?
Yeah. Let's go to in first. In a case where it's in community of property, things are somehow deemed to be simple, but they're the most difficult of estates to try and dissolve. Remember, when you're going through divorce, it's a very emotional stage in any marriage. The ending of a marriage is emotional. And when it comes to emotions and application of objectivity, it's a very difficult exercise. So marriages in community of property, when division of the estate and the liabilities, the assets and the liabilities, is a very, very touchy subject. Why? Because at the end of the marriage, you start getting the and now 50% there more. Is that even fair? But the reality is that what you have actually contracted for is a situation where, in the event you get to divorce, he or she gets 50% of the assets and he or she is liable for 50% of the liabilities. And then you get still the conversations that say, I don't even know how they were created. I don't even know. He was just paying for liabilities and I wasn't part of it. And you get to question them. Do you understand what the Abolition of Marital Power Act says? Do you understand the consequences of your marriage in community of property, that you are actually in profit and loss? Do you also understand the fact that you knew there were liabilities, you just didn't know where they were coming from, and you watched them get in and out of your home, your money is being expended on paying such liabilities, that you actually condoned the action? And at such a point where now divorce comes into place, you can't quite come and say, Scott says that 2015, I'm not a part of it. You have been a part of it for the past 5 years.
Yeah. So it's 50-50 assets, 50% assets, 50% liabilities.
Guillotine
right.
style.
Yeah. So before we move into out of community of property. I want us to take a quick break, but there's an interesting comment here by Hannah. She's saying, Bonolo, why are you saying divorce is unfortunate? Sometimes that's the best solution and it frees someone. Let's go for a quick break. We'll be back just now. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're having such an interesting conversation here. I know this is one topic that you can't have enough of. You learn every time you have conversations around marriage, children, divorce, assets, and all that. So, Wame, we're going to look at now dissolution of estate in out of community of property.
All right. Out of community of property is simpler in that, one, if there was no antenuptial contract that says we are out, but we will calculate our marriage in such a manner that there's accrual, then it's a straightforward issue. What's yours is yours, what's his is his. The liabilities that are associated with yourself are handled by yours, associated with him are handled by him. That's it, goodbye. And now we can address issues, Saban. But where there's the system of accrual, there's a certain methodology that is adopted. You'll have different types of antenuptial contracts. Double, maybe you keep 50% of that and I keep 20% of this. It's just dependent on how the contract was drafted. So you follow the contract to the T, and that is simple. Now, in comparison with in community of property where there is no written contract, how is absolve from which liability and which property and stuff. This one is a straightforward one. In you calculating, you know exactly what Bonolo's equity is and what her husband's equity is. So it's a simpler regime to work with at the time of divorce. But I must say there are instances where spouses married out of community of property start transacting comfortably in marriage as though they're married in community of property. And now at the time of divorce, in Nahore, what was your contract towards certain acquisition of a certain type of property? So now it's not a 50-50 rule. It's contribution. It's where now the concept of a universal partnership comes into play, because we are now assessing each party's input in the total net worth of what they claim to have put together or the other party claims to have had an interest in.
Awesome. I'm checking the comments. If you have any question, please put it down here so that Wame could address it. Yes, continue to tag a friend, continue to tag your husband, your wife, your friends, your family, tag them, and definitely bring 2-3 people here. They will definitely benefit from this conversation. Wame, we talked about in out of community of property, marriage, divorce. If people marry in community of property, later in life, they realize things have changed for them, and they get to be aware of these things, and they are able to assess themselves, and one says, oh, now I'm more exposed, and I think out of community of property may work for us. They have that conversation, they agree on it. Can a couple then change the marriage regime later?
Indeed. The Married Persons Property Act, Section 8 of it allows for this process. And I love the fact that you highlighted agreed on it. We have instances where one of the parties would want to change the marriage regime and the other party is disinterested. It is impractical. Remember, when you covenanted or contracted from the onset, it was an agreed to process. It's not like divorce. Here you are saying we're still in marriage, but we are transacting differently in how we're handling the risk and assets liabilities thereof. So it has to be consensual. There is a process allowed for in law for that consensual agreement or step.
All right. Just after asking that, a question came through. Somebody asking the exact question, but then she's also asking, how easy is that? We hear that you have to divorce and remarry, all that. Can you just clear this for us?
No, for this process, you don't need to divorce. It's a very recent development in law, which is a very welcome development, you know. People can get married in and later change to out, or can get married out and later change to in. This process is allowed to happen at least twice in one marriage. So you can change your mind and then change your mind again. So it's allowed without having for the two of you divorce.
How
So
easy is this process?
it's as easy coming to me to pay me one. But on a serious tip, there's advertisement of your assets, not your assets and liabilities, but to the creditors of the estate, or you want to change, and it has to be done in circulating newspaper mo Botswana and in the government gazette thrice in a row. And there has to be notification to the registrar of marriages on a 30-day notice as a statutory requirement. And post that, then we make an application to court. And the court, if the court is satisfied with our amendments in accordance with the statutory provisions, it grants the order. After granting of the order, the third process now is to have a deed of variation of the type of regime you were in, having it lodged with the deeds registry. So this process quite takes a bit of time in terms of the 30-day statutory notice. Application to court takes time, having audience before court takes time, and also lodgement with deeds is dependent on the timelines studied. So it's a technical process, and I wasn't kidding when I say you do need an eye of an attorney because it's technical, but it's a doable process.
Okay, so maybe a year to take a year?
No, a year is too long. A year is too long. If you have a diligent attorney, that should take not more than 3.5 months.
Oh, awesome. All right.
I'm trying to appreciate court timelines in all this.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We've talked about two people getting married, Wame. Let's now talk about children. I've had, a number of conversations around this on Duma FM. And I feel like, children are trafficked into marriages sometimes. A lot of us are not informed around this. So we make uninformed decisions even about our children. So let's talk about children coming into a marriage. What needs to happen? What should be considered? And talk about the ages as well.
Hey, this is a very touchy subject, like you're saying. A lot of children get into marriage, and it's so sad because at the time when people are getting married, they really aren't concentrating on the effects of the children, or of the step they're taking on the children. They don't put children into process who understand what it means to have them assimilated into this new union. Some get to conversate with the other side to say, I'm getting married, I'd like for you to appreciate the partner that I'm getting married to and how we're going to co-parent. Some just don't. So it's a very diverse topic, which has a lot of absent parents, whether mothers or fathers, very unhappy. But the reality is that most of the children who are under the custody or care of one of the partners who's getting married really aren't addressed to the full. Addressing children's issues in this instance is, one, we can go co-parenting where the other party is still alive. Their guardianship rights are not neglected or obviated by the fact that there's a new partner in place. That's where a role in my child's life, which is actually a right that is inherent to any parent who has given life to Wana. And you have issues of access also being an issue. One is trying to settle in their marriage. They're not trying to disrupt the peace of their marriage, and therefore the intermittent presence of an absent parent, we call the parents who are not in the lives of Bana daily absent parents, not to say that they're absent in the caretaking, but that's the legal term. And
it's a legal term. It's a legal term meaning you don't stay with the child.
Yes.
So when they say I'm an absent parent, I should not be offended.
No. It's not to offend.
Right. Got you.
And you know, when obviously you're trying to settle into a new environment, Lenyalo is one of them. You don't want disruption. And it appears as if the other parent is a disruptive factor. So you find Mwana having the rights, the access to the other parent, someone is trying to settle in marriage. And because this whole process of getting into marriage wasn't quite discussed between the two parties. So, and then comes about the issue of whether you really should adopt this child who comes with your loving husband, or whether you should leave them as their parents' own child. Such conversations need to be opened up and really, really addressed. And we have this behavior of just going with the flow, which is really, really wrong, and which leaves a lot of children hurt and a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of bitter absent parents. And then we drag them to courts for and then his response is and they both don't realize that neither one of the points that you are saying really holds water when you are not doing the right thing. There's a saying in law that says you must come to the court with clean hands. So if you are the parent who is divesting the other parent of access to the child because you have just recently gotten married and all you want to claim is maintenance, you best be ready to address the issue of access. And if you are busy trying to access as the absent parent, you best be ready to address issue of maintenance. So those are things that are in the picture. And you find these children who are assimilated in marriage end up, and I'm going to put it in a loose sense, being one of the causative factors for a breakdown of marriage.
Awesome. I think we're having some feedback. Do you hear me clearly?
Yes, I do.
Do you hear? Okay. All right. Yeah, I can only imagine how one begins to deal with that, especially when it comes to more than two parents. So you have to manage your marriage and maybe two other parents who probably marry and have their own partners, and that's just adds to the list of people that are concerned or involved in the life of the child. And just you saying that really demonstrates just how important it is for couples to talk about children. So there is this thing, yes, Wame thing. You talked earlier about adoption, which is the legal way of from their biological parents. So most people what does it mean for them should they want to divorce in regards to
I think we need to appreciate one thing as our culture and as Batswana. we have somehow normalized getting married twice as process ya lenyalo. And getting married twice in this instance, I'm talking customary law and then civil law. But we don't quite understand what each process means. When you're getting married ka Setswana, go ntshiwa magadi go na le patlo, re ja mokete wa lenyalo, o wetse. Ka Setswana wa bonyetse kana wa bonyetswe. Lenyalo la be le hedile go kgotleng ebile o ka sakela tlhalo kana go thubelwa lelapa. Simple. Yes. And ka sone Setswana sone seo, ga o ema mo lekgotleng o re ke tsa le namane, o raya gore ngwana o ka ga tlhokomelong ya me ebile ke mmona e le ngwanake. Ka Setswana. Now, ka moso ga o ya go molaodi o re wa go folosa, wa go heta o sign form either called a form A or a form B that says now ke kgaogana le gore dithoto di tsa lenyalo la me di regulate-iwe kana lenyalo la me le regulate-iwe ka customary law. I get it. Now, after having said that, you were married under customary law, you have assumed civil law, which now is the law that helps the operation of your marriage. That form that you sign, that certificate ya lenyalo, coupled with either form A for your out of community or form B for your in community, says now the law that regulates your marriage is civil law. So when now is the money go customary law, but now the regulator of your marriage is civil law, and it has adoption. And adoption is a process of law that goes through courts. The magistrate court that is closest to where the child is the one that takes care of the process of adoption. So if you and your spouse and the little child and the father or the mother of that child, the biological ones, have not gone through the process of going to customary court to go and assert the rights of one who wants to be an adoptive parent and have the court order in that regard, ga gona namane ileng gope. Ngwana ke ntse kwa batsadi ba gagwe ba biological. All you have to address now is the access, the maintenance thereof. So it's the distinction that has always been lacking in our understanding that customary marriage is a norm mo Botswana, and it immediately precedes civil marriage according to our practice. Somehow we've made the two intertwined but have forgotten that each process is regulated by its certain law. So namane e go customary, go civil law, go sayana nyano o bo obviate molao wa customary. Re bereka ka whether you have adopted the child legally or not.
Right. There's a question there. Can one reverse the adoption of a child who was legally adopted via marriage when the parents divorce?
It's a very difficult one, but it has been done. Because you are basically saying, I am negating the fact that I am a parent to this child. And you need to prove to court why. It is not common because because adoption does have an expiry date. An expiry date is the age of majority. It's 18. But right now, if you want to kgaogana le ngwana gago, bontsha lekgotla gore ke eng o tshwanetse gore o kgaogane le ngwana gago. A bo mmusetsa ko go mmagwe kana rrago o mo tsere mo go ene. E be go nna le process hele e bonalang ka gore ngwana o ha ka tshela sena mmagwe kana rrago. And wena o mo kgaogantse la umbilical cord ka ntededi. So you have to go through the proper channels.
Awesome. Wame, maybe the last thing, there's a whole lot and a lot to take in. But maybe the last thing would be a will. What is a will? How do we use this instrument in our marriages?
A will is basically a document that says how will your property devolve at the time you die. A will is basically there to dictate your interest in any estate, in any business, or whatever entity or whatever investment at the time. It is not a tool per se for marriage. It's an instrument that dictates what happens holistically around your life. In marriage, I would say we need to speak of my demise, whether I'm married in or out of community of property, and how I'd want either my half share if I'm married in community of property, or my whole assets when I'm married out. But it's not an instrument per se for lenyalo. Because instrument when one of the requirements of a will is that a beneficiary under the will should not know the contents of a will, because then it makes it contestable. Unless it's a joint will. And a joint will normally is made by people who are married in community of property, understanding dissolution. But those are dynamics for another day.
All right. There's a case I followed with interest. This woman got married to a man who had divorced. His first marriage had ended. He got his 50%. He was married in community of property. This new marriage, they also marry in community of property. And then the husband passes on. While she's still mourning, she sees an advertisement in the local newspapers about the estate of her late husband. She had never been to the master's office. And, she called me and she was like, Akana, I see this. Can you go with me to the master's office just to go and understand what is going on? So we sat down with the master of court, who then explained that everyone who has interest in that estate have the right to initiate that process.
Yeah.
And I found it very, very uncomfortable, but we had to. She had to go through that. So I wonder how many people out there know about this. So Wame, can you just say something when it comes to now marrying a divorced partner? What do you need to consider? Or a divorcee, as they call them.
One, an interested party, I would say, I'll come back to that, is any party who knows how that could be my mother, that could be my brother, my husband, my children from the previous marriage, etc., etc. And it is rather unfortunate that at the time when we get married to people who have gone through the process before, we don't address, as the people who are getting married, the issue ya hore jaanong tsa pele re ira jang ka tsone. Because reality is almost has an interest in your estate. Whether you're going to get married 5 times or just once, the person whom you have given birth to has an interest in the estate. And as long as you do not, forever, as long as you do not have a will that denounces their interest in your estate, they do. So a will protects that. And when you are getting married now, a will is not going to really work because you don't know the contents. But there's a need for an antenuptial contract that says, this is property that belonged to me prior to getting married. And therefore, it devolves as follows. my children from the previous marriage will benefit 1, 2, 3. And this is what I step into marriage with. Be that as it may, if you get married in community of property and you pass on and you still do not have a will, those children have an interest in the property because you still have a 50% share in the property which has not been advocated for. And therefore, any beneficiary intestate has to have that share. So now you get to appreciate why you get to discuss premarital conditions of property and post. And they have to be properly assimilated in such a manner that it's either an antenuptial contract or a will that dictates the division. People who die intestate leave a lot of problems for us who are still alive. That is the reality.
Yeah.
And that's why master of the High Court. Because le bana ba neng ba sa disclosiwa, as long as ba le biological children ba benefit.
Yeah, very interesting because she did mention that to say le ngwana hela o leng gore making ngwana wa muswi, they will benefit. So as a man, as a woman, you marry, your partner had divorced, so one should be really aware of this, that whatever you are, if you marry in community property, whatever you are building with in this new marriage, children, his biological children or her biological children have the right to inheritance. Wame, as a way of rounding up, you've said so much. As a way of rounding up, can you just take two people who say we want to get married? Can you just take us through, just summarizing what you suggest as an attorney, what you suggest they do up until they get married?
1, social counseling, which we call psychological or whatever. It's very important to know who you're getting married to and why. 2, legal counsel. You need to understand the legalities of the concept you're getting into. And in that setting, you get to ask a lot of questions. You need to your partner, basically, for the comfort of knowing this is what I'm lending myself in. 3, appreciate their background, the need for disclosure of previous relationships, children from previous relationships, etc., etc. 3, 4, we need to understand that health actually is a paramount point of conversation prior to getting married. And disclosure is important. And you can take action in the event there was non-disclosure of a factor that actually has your marriage pivoting around it. Another issue, you need to understand the disposal of assets and liabilities when you get into marriage. Therefore, you need to have a conversation around in community, out of community, death. Those are conversations which should be basic as you get into marriage. So in rounding up, you need to then understand those are questions that you need to sit down and ask yourself. Weddings may be beautiful, but marriage is work. Marriage is an expense. You deposit into that account daily, and the return is dependent on what you put in and how you put it in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wame. Lastly, please do share where our viewers could contact you. I know you have an office in Gaborone and Francistown. Just share your contacts.
Yes, our office line Gaborone is 311-4092 or 7479-9375, 7479-9375. And our Francistown office line is 241-6598, 241-6598 or 7479-0741, 74790741. And from those contacts, you can get my personal. Thank you. Yay.
So sorry about that, Wame. But you shared the numbers, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Wame, for taking time to talk to us. I've seen comments here, people saying we've learned so much today. I hope that we can next time go deep into other issues. This was just marriage, and we've not gone deep. And as far as children are concerned, I know, but I hope that we'll find time to do so. Thank you so much for gracing our show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a beautiful evening.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was Wame Thanke of Thanke and Associates. She shared her contacts. If you missed them, you can inbox us. I'll be able to share the numbers with you. Thank you so much for staying up to the end. Thank you so much for your contributions. We are here every Monday, 7 to 8 p.m. and having transforming conversations right here. And if you are new here, you've just joined a tribe who really are about knowledge, empowerment, and growth. So yeah, awesome. Oh, thank you so much. So please do like Bonolo Speaks Facebook page. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Bonolo Speaks. Subscribe and please do hit on the notification bell so that when we go live, you can get a notification. So I'll be happy. All the 80 something people I see here today, please do go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. It's a free subscription. Thank you so much. We'll meet again in the next session right here. It's a good evening. Thank you so much.
Life Skills Academy is an institution that offers coaching programs for children of ages 6 to 16 years. Now, there are life skills a child should learn by the age of 8 years. If not, the child may struggle as a teenager or adult. So give your child a lifetime gift by enrolling them for emotional intelligence, financial intelligence, and other life skills needed in the 21st century. For more information, call us on 7162-9362 or visit our Facebook page, Life Skills Academy.